Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our 2019 SOMD swimming officials webinar for summer games here. This is Zach Cintron from the SOMD staff. We're also joined by Rob Dobry, who I unmuted. So, Rob, you're good to go whenever you're ready.
I'm here.
Perfect. So we got Rob on the line. And so we're going to go through our webinar here. I'll talk about the order of events real quick, just to give everybody another view of that. And then after that, I will turn it over to Rob, and Rob will walk you through some slides, give you some information about the officials and the game plan going into summer games here. And then at the end, we will have a section to answer your questions. I am moderating this myself tonight, so you'll have to bear with me, but you can also put in your questions within the GoToWebinar platform. It should be in your bar that pops up for the webinar tonight. So we'll get rolling. We'll hit your questions. And then at the end, I also want to show everybody the summer games portion of our website and the resources that you can find through there, along with our swimming page. But we'll hit that at the end after questions. Again, our agenda for tonight is order of events, just a breeze by of not the rules themselves, but where the rules can be found and where they originate from, meet ref authority, rules and examples, timing, and then we'll hit your questions at the end. Again, order of events for summer games this year. The big change going into this year is we're having a Friday afternoon session. That'll run 1 to 4:30. If all things go as planned, we'd like to get out of there even as early as 4, but we're not going to push our luck. So we put in for 4:30, and then we'll do our normal Saturday, Sunday sessions. It's a little bit easier to see as a visual setup as a Saturday AM and PM session and a Sunday AM PM session, just to give you an idea of what you're looking at there as we move into summer games. Rob, at this point, I will turn it over to you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Just want to first talk about the governing rules of Special Olympics swimming. You know, Special Olympics is the official Special Olympic sports rules for swimming shall govern all Special Olympic competitions. If you happen to, and we have sent them out, they are available. You can read the Special Olympic rules. For the most part, they actually refer to FINA, which is the Special Olympics, the international sports. Since Special Olympics is an international sports program, we use FINA rules. FINA rules are exactly the same as USA swimming rules, except there is nothing in any of the FINA rules about swimming yards, which we will swim in yards as we always have, because in the US, I can only think of one off the top of my head, indoor swimming pools are actually meters length. We do keep the events in the distance for what they would be meters. So there's a 400 free, there's an 800 free, and there's a 1500 free. If you're actually doing yards, those would be a 500 free, 1000 free, and a 1650. But we keep the distances the same as everything, even though we're swimming yards and meters. If you look at the official Special Olympic sports rules for swimming, what you'll find is there aren't a whole lot of technical rules involved in that. Virtually, they refer just to the FINA rules for anything to do with strokes or anything like that. So the FINA, or the National Governing Body rules that they set up, they're employed for everything except when they actually are in conflict with the official Special Olympic sports rules for swimming, or Article 1, in which case official Special Olympic sports rules for swimming shall always apply. I actually look at what FINA says, and I go by anything that's in the Special Olympic rules that conflict with those. Now, my authority, in cooperation with the games director, and also Neil Coffey also has some say in this, I have the authority to adjust the rules on a case-by-case basis for safety and well-being of the athletes. What that means is there will be athletes that cannot exactly meet the requirements for the stroke. If I know about that ahead of time, I will make concessions for that. I allow them to do things like there's some athletes that can't use their legs correctly or their arms correctly. We make exceptions for those, and we won't disqualify on the basis of that. But it is very important that I know ahead of time of any of these limitations. It just makes it easy for me. It makes me not have to go to coaches, because I can look at some athletes in the pool and I can tell you they're not capable of moving their legs, especially like in breaststroke, the way they should be, but I can make exceptions for that.
And Rob, not to cut you off, to hop in real quick, for anybody that you potentially need an exception for, the easiest way to notify you is to notify us in their entry, putting it into the notes for
Absolutely.
correct, right?
Yes, that is correct. That's
All
the
right, just wanted to
best
make
and
sure.
easiest way. That way I have a list that actually shows me what athletes cannot do or sorry about that. All right. I can intervene in the competition at any stage to ensure that the regulations are observed. Also, one of the things I will do is, given the fact that we have this, we've actually adjusted it again this year, the order of events. I'm making sure that there are no conflicts. And if you as coaches see where there could be some conflicts, let me know and I can make some exceptions for that. I also like to know hearing impaired type things so that I can actually have the starter will do hand signals for everything. And as coaches, you are allowed to actually help an athlete that may have trouble hearing so that they can get a fair start. If there are protests, they come to me, and then there's a committee. We'll get together and we'll talk about it and decide what happens with that. I have full control and authority over all the officials. If you have questions, see me. Don't go talking to the officials. I will adjudicate anything with my officials. And I will mention that all the officials I will have in deck are USA Swimming certified, most at the national level. There will be several referees, because I can usually get a bunch of the referees I know to come and help out. So that, and they're all just like me, are nationally certified by USA Swimming as a referee. I enforce all the rules and decisions of the official Special Olympic sports and FINA rules. If there are any questions, I can decide relating to the actual conduct of the meet. That's anything in the water. I own the water for during the meet. All right, let's go and talk about some of the rules examples. Some of the ones that over the years I've noticed there are probably more things. And I will say I was at the Loyola qualifier several weekends ago, and the amount of disqualifications were way down, which is wonderful, because there's not an official alive that wants to call a disqualification. And I will mention that I've been involved in officiating swimming for more than 30 years. I have never told an athlete that I disqualified them. I've never actually used a disqualified word to anybody. I will explain to them what they did, and normally they will ask me, well, does that mean that I'm disqualified? And then I will tell them if they are in fact disqualified. All right, so let's go through some of these rules. Standing on the bottom is allowed during the freestyle. The flotation, the assisted, and any of the 15-meter unassisted events, they can stand on the bottom of the pool. What they cannot do is jump off the bottom of the pool, headed farther down the pool. So as long as they just stand and just kind of lift themselves back off and start going again, that's perfectly fine. You can assist swimmers, like I said at the start, if they're hearing or vision impaired. We will do hand signals for all of them that we know. And a lot of times, if we know ahead of time of that, I'll rearrange their lane assignments so they're closer to the starter so they can actually see the hand signals that are going. There's a whole set of hand signals that go through. You wiggle your hand to tell them to get ready. As you want them to step up, your hand comes up, take your mark, your hand goes all the way up, and at the start, you drop your hand. There are no devices that aid speed, buoyancy, or endurance are allowed. That means for the regular events, flotation devices or anything like that are not allowed. Starts are always allowed from the blocks, beside the block, or in the water. In the water starts, they must have one hand on the end of the pool or the block. Backstroke is the exception to that. They actually face the wall and come off on their backs. If you have athletes that are swimming backstroke during freestyle, and there are several examples of that we've seen over the years, they must use a forward start in a freestyle event. After they start forward, they can roll to their back and stay on their back as long as they want. Another important thing that comes up a lot is once you're on the surface in the freestyle, backstroke, and butterfly, they must remain on the surface. They cannot dive back down under the water. That counts for those 3 strokes. Breaststroke is slightly different. In the breaststroke, the athlete's head must break the surface of the water at some point during each of the breaststroke cycles. Cycle in breaststroke is defined as an arm pull followed by a kick. The exception to that is at the start or after a turn, in which case they are allowed to do a downward butterfly or dolphin kick. They can do one. It used to be, it had to be after the arm pull, but they have amended that rule slightly so that now you can do your downward butterfly kick anytime as you're coming off the wall or once you dive in. Then you go into the regular cycle. Then you must complete the cycle and you can do no more of those. All right, last thing I'm going to talk about, and then hopefully there'll be lots of questions about the rules. I do have my rule book sitting here right with me. I have a USA Swimming rule book. I do not have a FINA rule book, but the FINA rules and the USA Swimming rules are exactly the same. USA Swimming goes with the FINA rules because USA's swimming main purpose is to get athletes into the World Championships and the Olympics and all that. So we just follow their rules for everything. What we are doing this year with timings, we are not going to use the touch pads. We're going to use 2 timers per lane with 2 buttons. This says 1 watch. If we have enough watches, I'll give them 2 so that they have 2 watches. The buttons are what govern the times. We're not using the touch pads because we found over the years, especially with relays and with a lot of these kids not being able to get out of the pool, and unfortunately, Towson has one of the higher walls to have to climb out of. Most of them tend to go to the ladders on either side. So sometimes you'll get these kids will go crossing lanes and touch pads everywhere. So, so that we don't have to, and actually the guy who's running the Daktronics, which is the timing system that will take care of the buttons, who's probably one of the best at it I know, certainly in the Baltimore, Washington area. He's very, very good at this. All he has to deal with is the buttons. So the official times will always be based on the buttons unless there is evidence of a button malfunction, in which case we will go get watch times and adjudicate the times from the watches. All right, now we're going to talk about 2 of the rules that for someone who's been in competitive swimming for, God, more than 50 years, drive me crazy. If you go too fast, you'll get dinged for that. And that's done to eliminate people being put in divisions that really are faster than they should be in that division. So I know you've all read these things, and it happens. Usually it'll happen a few times during the summer games where we'll have an athlete that'll actually exceed the time that was put in for divisioning by, it's 15% for all the 25-meter plus events except for the 25 freestyle and the 25-meter flotation. It's 25% in the freestyle, the flotation, and the 4x25 freestyle relay, and any of the shorter distances, which this year we're going to do. All of that will be done Friday night. And basically that's what I have from here, what kind of questions do you all have?
Let's see if we got any questions yet. Remember, you can enter your questions into the webinar system, or you can also raise your hand. If you select the raise your hand button, I will unmute you on my end, and you can talk freely. Until we get some questions, I want to show you our Summer Games website first. On the website here, so I'll walk you through it from the start. From the main SOMD page here, if you go to Coaches, and then at the bottom of the Coaches page, or Coaches Resource page, for one, this has access to all the sports and all of our major games, which you'll find towards the bottom, along with other things for volunteers, GMS resources, and such. But for you guys, you're going to want to click Summer Games here. And then this will give you the Summer Games page. So this is all the generic, overarching Summer Games stuff. Any major information you can find here. This is extremely helpful for HODs for their webinars. Once this webinar is concluded, I will download it, put the slides on here and the recording. So if you want to come back, we'll have the officials webinar on here. We also have the link to our family webinar next week. Venue maps, Towson maps, the individual sports resources page, which we'll go to the swim one next. And something that'll be very important for a lot of head coaches too, is the results while we're on site at Summer Games. After each day, we're going to do our best to get the results entered into GMS, downloaded, and then put on the website so that you can see it for the next day. Again, that highly depends on what time we get out of venues and how quickly my brain works to turn those things over, but I'm going to try to get them up each night so that you can see those results going into the next day. Checking out our swimming resource page here, it'll take you to a similar looking page which features our Special Olympics sports rules, the FINA rules, and the SOI swimming coaches guide. So all the things that Rob was talking about for rules and stuff like that, right here is everything that you need. Additionally, all of our webinars are listed underneath. Again, this webinar, once it's done, slides will go on here, recording will go on here if you want to access it again. Family webinar is on here. And then our pre-competition webinar, which is coming up in 2 weeks, you can register for it on here as well. And, you know, if you're 3 days out from Summer Games and you saw, what did Zach or Neil say on that pre-competition webinar? I can't remember. The recording and the slides will be right there for you guys to access. And for future notice, just so you guys know, our coaches training opportunities will be on here. And then all the competitions for the local and regional type of programs. Summer Games Coaches Resource page, it'll take you just back to Summer Games. Let's see if I can get back into questions here. I'm not seeing any questions. Does nobody have a question for Rob? Was his slides, were they so spot on that Rob answered every question? I find that hard to believe. Rob, is there anything else that you can think of that you may want to add?
Let's talk a little bit about the order of events and how they were set up. We do this every year. We look at the past couple year competition and try and adjust the order of events so that we don't have athletes going back to back in anything. If you happen to have an athlete doing that, let me know and we'll try and work something out for that. But we've actually put in where normally we run Saturday basically from 8 o'clock until we finish for the day. We're actually set this up right now so that there will be an hour break before we start the afternoon session. That's given if for no other reason, so my poor officials can actually get something to eat between the sessions. None of the sessions other than Saturday mornings go more than 3.5 hours. Saturday mornings talks about going for 4.5 hours, but we do have the 800 freestyle in the beginning, which is kind of a very specific set of athletes that do distance stuff.
Yeah, and when Neil looked at this, myself, Mike Sarnowski, you know, Neil did a lot of work, especially on the math for average time per event type based on last year's Summer Games numbers. And we kind of looked at this and put it together. That's where Friday evolved out of this, where, if we add that extra half day, how much further ahead can that put us? And again, this is all not only for ease of getting everybody through their events to awards and all that kind of stuff, but we've also talked in past webinars about how it gets unbelievably crowded in those gyms. So we are trying to potentially thin out the numbers directly in the gym each day. And again, this is something that we're gonna go through this year. It feels like a really good setup. But if there are things that you think there might be better ways to do it or tweak it, I highly recommend doing our Summer Games evaluation that comes out after Summer Games. That is the best place. I know I go through every single response through there and pull out all the swimming ones, and I have them in my binder as well for consideration for things to upgrade and change next year as well. So this order feels really good, and we're going to go through this year. And again, if there's something that you think may tweak and might make things a little bit better in the gym, in the pool, whatever it may be, feel free to let us know in that eval, because at the end of the day, that's what really helps us evolve the games and make them better for our athletes and the coaches and families that attend.
But what we're trying to do is keep everything flowing. The athletes go to staging, they come in, they swim, they go to awards, and if they have other events, then they can go back to staging, and it's a big loop that keeps running all day long with swimmers coming in, swimming, awards, back to staging, back to swimming, and the whole thing just round in a circle. What we don't want to happen, which has happened a few times over the years, is I wind up with athletes waiting for awards when they should be in staging so they can come swim their next event. And if you actually believe you have an athlete that doesn't have time to go through all of that, let us know, and we'll make sure when they finish swimming, they get where they need to be so they can swim next.
I'm not seeing any questions here still. Again, remember, if you have a question, you can either type the question into the GoToWebinar tab that pops out for the webinar itself, or you can raise your hand, click the little raise hand button, and we will answer your question. Again, to touch base on what Rob was saying, if you have an athlete that as you're going through your heat sheets and order of events, if they seem to have events that are going to be back-to-back, or at least based upon the staging of it back-to-back, make sure they go to their second event there, and we'll get them through there, and we'll get them awarded with full honors for both races for sure. We'll definitely get them taken care of. But to keep the flow going, it's most important to get them through to their right races for the day.
I can go through each stroke if you'd like.
I mean, that is up to you, Rob. If you want to, we can, to see if anybody else has any questions that they want to formulate. If not, we can call it a night here. That's entirely up to you, Rob.
That's up to the coaches.
I got a question from Rachel here. I'm gonna unmute Rachel. Rachel, you should be good to go.
So I don't necessarily know if my question is appropriate. I just wanted to mention something about Friday. I do understand the need for it, but I also have a lot of pushback coming from my parents, my athletes, because many of our athletes are still in school.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's always the toughest decision with Friday. No, do you have more to add to that before I just
wanted to put that out there, that there is a lot of feedback coming, and it does cause a few issues, especially with the unified races, because like all of our coaches can't be there on Friday due to their work schedules. So we've had to like adjust our unified races as well. So.
Yeah, that's definitely the toughest part about considering Friday into the schedule. And it's not only tough for an athlete school perspective for our traditional athletes, our unified athletes, but for our volunteers, we understand as well, because Friday is a work day. The toughest thing is this is our most valuable option at this point with the numbers that we host. Otherwise, if we are stuck into Saturday, Sunday only, with the conversation that we've had in past webinars and stuff like that of going to a truer allotment process, that would kick in much sooner than we would like it to or anticipate it to, just because there's only so much time in a day on 2 days, So if Friday doesn't feel right for people again this year, we're going to give it a go this year. I think it's a good setup based on time available and opportunity that we have. But if it doesn't feel right to people, again, please put that in your post-games evaluation, because the more feedback we get, the more we'll reconsider and look into different opportunities. But if it feels right to most, we'll probably stick with that route. But I appreciate you bringing that up, Rachel.
Thank you.
Anybody else with a question? Oh, got a question from Alan. Alan's question is, I have a bunch of athletes that have 3 or 4 events on Sunday and none on Saturday. Alan, if I unmute you, can you speak to that a little bit more just so I know? Alan, are you there?
Yeah, it's the 100 back, the 100 free, and the 200 back.
Gotcha.
I've got a bunch of athletes that those are their 3 events.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can't do a 4x100 medley because the 100 butterfly, and I only have I have 2 athletes that can swim 100 butterfly, but it's right before the 200 back. So once they finish the butterfly, I think there's only 500 butterflyers in the state. Once they finish the butterfly, their relay team is on the pool deck.
Gotcha. So is your question about the best way to get them set up to keep swimming and not cycle?
No, it's not a question. It's a problem that
Gotcha.
I think that you need to. There's a lot of older athletes that don't swim 50s anymore. They swim 100s.
Gotcha.
And you got everything packed on Sunday.
Gotcha. So potentially looking at thinning out the hundreds on Sunday and filtering them into the Saturday a little bit more.
Well, yeah, you need to sort of think it through. That's all. It's,
Okay.
because with the butterfly there in the 4x100 medley, I can't put them in a medley, and I don't want to bring them in for one relay on Saturday because the parents go, I'm not coming up there for a relay on Saturday, be it a 4x100 free traditional or a 4x100 unified. It's not worth it to them to drive up to Towson for one event, which you don't know what time of the day it'll be. So they're going to have to get there by 1:30 or something like that to make sure they're not staged or miss their event. Because we don't know. I tell my parents, it's not time with swimming, so don't think that it's going to take 2 hours or an hour to get from the 25 butterfly to the 4x100 freestyle, because you just don't know how fast the meet will go. I'm just saying that now those kids can't be, or athletes cannot be on a 4x100 because all their events are on Sunday.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm making a note of that, and we'll look into that again. As we go through this year, if that seems just as much of a problem on site as it feels for you right now, Alan, again, do an eval, because that's the most important thing. Those evals, again, I go through all of them. I share them with Neil and the rest of the team, and that's how we make a lot of decisions of, okay, we thought this would work on our end. It didn't feel like it worked on the athletes and coaches' end. How can we remedy this? But I appreciate you up now, Alan, for some thought ahead of time here.
No problem. Just pay attention to it at Sunday at Towson. That's all.
Will do. Does anybody have any more questions for myself or Rob? If not, Rob, again, it's your call if you'd like to go through some of the stroke stuff. If there's anything important, any little pieces and strokes that you've noticed that people need to keep an eye on that you'll be looking out for, or we can call it a night.
If there's no question from the coaches, we can call it a night.
All right. I think that'll make this a lot easier to view for people too as well, that may review it again before the end. These don't all have to be an hour long, and I think people will appreciate that. So with that said, thank you everybody for attending tonight, getting some questions out there.
One final thing from me. If there is during the meet, there are any questions from any coaches, come and talk to me. I will be there. I will be there from Friday all the way through Sunday when we're done. Come and ask me. I can explain most of these rules. I've been playing with them for years.
All right. Well, you guys heard it from Rob first. If there's any problems at all, take them to Rob, not me. But again, thank you all for having taking the time out of your night to attend this webinar. Hopefully the information was valuable to you. I thoroughly appreciate Rob being on here and giving out information to help everyone. Hopefully that puts us into a better position when the games open up. And like Rob said, if there's any questions for him rules-wise during the meet, please come to him, ask questions of myself, and we will definitely take care of you as best we can. With that said, we will see you guys all at Summer Games. Have a great night.
Thank you all.